Welcome to this week's episode of Popcorn Wind Down. I'm Eddie.
And I'm Tammy.
Thank you for joining us. Ever dream of flying high? Want to learn how to do the perfect figure eight? Well, we can get you higher than you ever imagined at Paper Planes Flight School. For more information, check us out at weflyhigh.com. Tammy, are you going to check out Paper Planes?
At weflyhigh.com?
Yeah.
I don't think my lungs can handle that, but yeah.
Well, you got G-forces and stuff, and as far as I know, it's a legitimate flight school. I didn't ask questions. I didn't see any flyers. I just said, okay, the check cleared. So, yeah, I would make sure you had an excellent breathing capacity as well before you check out We Fly High.
Yes.
Speaking of flying high, this week we take off with Top Gun Maverick, the long-awaited sequel to 1986's Top Gun, which propelled its star, Tom Cruise, to superstardom. Top Gun Maverick takes place about 35 years after the original, and Tom Cruise resumes his role as Pete Maverick Mitchell, one of the Navy's most decorated fighter pilots. And after getting into trouble yet again, Maverick is sent back to the Top Gun flight school to help train and prepare a new batch of hotshot pilots for a deadly mission in which it is assured that someone will not make it back alive. So, Tammy, what did you think of Top Gun Maverick? Was it first class or a bootleg version of a Spirit flight?
It was good. I enjoyed it.
Okay, before we even get too far into it, did you ever watch the?
And now that I watched the second one, I ain't never watching the first one.
You just gonna break my heart like that. You didn't even let me get it out.
Well, I knew he was gonna ask. Everybody asked me that when I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go watch Top Gun, Maverick. We're gonna review it for the podcast." And everybody's like, "Oh, did you see the first one?" No, you gotta see the first one. No, I ain't never watching it.
What am I gonna do with you?
I heard it was like full of like, white male testosterone.
The first one?
Yeah.
Well, the first one it was made in '86, and considering special effects and all that in '86, they did a really good job. And it is the movie that probably propelled Tom Cruise into superstardom. And it was that the string of Tom Cruise movies. But yeah, Top Gun was probably the one that just actually put him on the map. So, but it's really, really good. And I did not watch it. I didn't have a chance to watch it, the original. I saw Maverick, but just seeing like the theme song, the first song that comes on, Danger Zone, from Kenny Loggins. So that just kind of took me there. And I was sitting in the movie theater, just like bobbing my head, and it kind of goes back. And then like the first scene where you see where he throws on the jacket, which is the original jacket from Top Gun, and just all this stuff. So I loved how I was excited. I loved that the OG, that it captured the spirit of the OG movie while also keeping allowing this movie to kind of stand and breathe on its own. So I did appreciate that. And if you've seen the original, you would know what I was talking about, but that's okay. We won't go there. I would just say that I love the sense of nostalgia. I also love that. Of course, they couldn't have Anthony Edwards back as Goose because he died in the original. But I do love how they had Iceman. Val Kilmer reprised his role of Iceman, even if it was brief. And that was good to see, especially considering that Val Kilmer is really ill. He does have cancer, and it is really hard for him to talk. So that was really, really cool. And I guess since you haven't seen the original, Iceman and Maverick kind of have the same relationship as Rooster and Goose, as Rooster and Hangman, except it was 10 times worse. Like Iceman and Maverick did not get along at all. So, yeah, but that was really, really cool. So what did you like about the movie?
I like the relationships. I like the action. I like Tom Cruise's character. I will say one thing is this movie did not make me a fan of Tom Cruise. Not a fan, cannot stand him. Um, but I just like the overall dynamics of the movie, like the frenemies that were like throughout the movie, like every scene. I was like, it's another scene with frenemies. Like I respect you, but like I'll take you out if I have to, kind of. So yeah, so there were very, very good dynamics and vibing going on within the whole movie.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, you don't like Tom Cruise. The person that I didn't like even more is Miles Teller. I am not a Miles Teller fan. And I can't say he's a good actor, but he's one of those that where sometimes it's hard to separate all of his personal bullshit, all the stuff that he does off the screen, um, to on screen. And it seems like on screen he's one of those who usually plays an asshole. So it's just like you don't know um, if he can play anything else besides in that one movie. The one movie that won an Oscar, and I can't even think of it right now. But so it's like usually he's playing the asshole role, and it's like okay, but he did not get on my nerves as much in this movie as I thought he would. So that was probably one of the big cons for me in wanting to see this movie. It's like I do not want to go see um, a whole movie with Miles Teller um, being the star, but he really wasn't the star. I I was actually surprised they made him likable. I actually liked his character Rooster, and I understood why he was mad. I understood where he was coming from. Um, so that was interesting to me. I like I said, I love the relationship between him and Maverick, and I understood he why Maverick never told him the truth about why he really pulled his papers, especially when he said he would rather hate for him to hate him than for him to hate his mom, especially after the fact when she had died, to kind of have to deal with that. But um, and having said that, I thought that maybe the reasoning was a little bit off because she didn't want him to follow in his dad's footsteps. Well, he really didn't know Goose that well because in the original, Goose died when he was really young. Um, but his pseudo father, his surrogate father, was Maverick. So at that point, it would have been more of him also kind of following in Maverick's footsteps, um, and that type of thing. So that was a little bit that was one of those plot holes that I kind of found, but I got it. But yeah, I thought Miles Teller was actually likable in this role. What about you?
Yeah. Miles Teller is like the Shia LaBeouf of this generation, I guess. Although Shia LaBeouf is also our generation, but where like he started out being very, very likable, and over time, as his stardom rose, he became an asshole. So he's not as likable as he was when he first started out. At least that's the way I view him. So I liked, like I said, like I liked Rooster, I liked Hangman, I liked all of the characters. I will be honest and say I think they all stood out on their own for the role that they were playing, which I love, even Bob. Um, so, but yeah, so I'm not a hater of Miles Teller. Like, I hate Tom Cruise. I do not like him at all. Um, but certain roles that he has played, that he has made his own, I like certain roles that he has played and that he's made his own. Like one of those roles would be Ethan Hunt. I love the Mission Impossible series. I do not like the actor, but I like the series, so I continue to go and see it. Um, but yes, I went and saw Top Gun, and I liked Top Gun. I enjoyed it, in spite of Tom Cruise being the star of the movie.
Yeah, two things. We'll get into that. The casting was good. I agree with you about the frenemies part. I love the casting. I also love the call signs: fanboy, payback, hangman, Bob. Uh, I just love the call signs. Harvard, yeah, it kind of made me want to go. I wish I would have become a fighter pilot so I could have a cool call sign. Not the reason why you didn't want to become a fighter pilot, but I was like, ooh, maybe Tammy would give me a cool call sign, but I don't know. But so I love that part. I did, and I did like it. And that was one of my favorite scenes where they were in the bar and everyone was coming in, and so she was like, "Oh, so you're my wingman. What's your call sign? What's your name? Bob. Okay, what's your call sign? Bob. But Bob, like she's like, okay, Bob, and then that was just his name, Bob. So I like that. That was one of my parts, and I also like I said, I love the sense of nostalgia from the original, and but yet they were still allowed to to this one to carry on its own. They went a little fast and loose with the time because roughly it would have been about 35 years, and in the movie, if he stuck to the real life time, then Rooster would have been pushing about 40. So you know, it is movie time. You can do that. That's just me being nitpicky, but
Yeah.
but I I I was a little skeptical because Top Gun was one of those movies where it's like, okay, yeah, you would kind of like to see what happened, but you didn't necessarily know how they were going to pull off a sequel, especially one that was so far down the line. Um, and I thought they did a really good job with that, telling the story, keeping it fresh, and like I said, paying homage to the original while still allowing this one to be its own thing. Um, it was billed as something for the next generation, and I guess the next generation of moviegoers, for those like yourself, although you, in all honesty, should have seen Top Gun, the original. But I'm thinking for the younger ones who would not have watched a movie, who would not have watched it. Um, I was a little surprised and disappointed that this really wasn't about passing the baton to the next generation because um, Tom Cruise was still the star. This was still his movie. And I guess when it says Top Gun Maverick, maybe that should have been the giveaway, but also it really wasn't about passing the baton because even in the end he was still the one who threw the mission, who still did all the daredevil stunts, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, he was a star of the movie, and that's one thing about Tom Cruise's movies is he's going to be the star of the movie. So if Tom Cruise is in the movie, he ain't no side character. Like, do you know a movie where Tom Cruise is the side character?
Besides one of the early 80s Rat Pack movies, The
Yeah.
Outsiders.
No, that's what I'm
uh,
saying. Besides the early movies, before he became the star that he is now, do you know a movie where he is the side character?
no, I don't. And I'm
Exactly.
not, but in a sense, it worked. I guess from the way that it was originally supposed to go down, and it was supposed to go down a while ago, but the one of the Scott bursts, Tony Scott, who was going to be in charge of the movie, he actually died. Um, so I know that delayed it a little bit. And I know there were some rewrites. I think because in one of the original iterations, I think Tom Cruise was supposed to have a smaller role, like it was supposed to be more of a passing of the baton. But like you said, a Tom Cruise vehicle is going to be a Tom Cruise vehicle. He's going to be driving that car. He's going to be producing it. The only thing he probably won't do is direct it, and I'm sure but he's going to be producing it. He's going to have a big say in the behind the scenes. And um, say what you will about Tom Cruise, I have mixed feelings about him too. He's one of those actors where I've generally been a fan of his. Uh, but the more you find out about the weird, it's kind of one of those things. Earlier, we had an earlier conversation about kind of compartmentalizing, kind of like I have to do with Miles Teller. Sometimes I try to leave, especially if it's not something egregious or criminal, and I just don't like you. I try to leave that outside of my judgment of the movies. So the whole weird Scientology thing aside, which has turned me off of Tom Cruise, um, in the later years, I'm like you. I do like the Mission Impossible series. I excuse all the realize someone's got to support the cult, and he's the main supporter. But that's neither here nor there. Um, but I say all that to say I can appreciate now, having seen this movie, why he fought so hard to keep it off of streaming. Why he fought so hard to make sure that it had its big theatrical debut, that it premiered in the movie theaters. It was a success. It is a success. It had the highest grossing Memorial Day debut in 15 years. So kudos to him for that. So he is like one of those quintessential movie stars. You might want to say he's even one of the last great action heroes or action stars. I don't know, but I can appreciate that. And aside from the weird stuff, you can I understand that he loves his craft. He loves making movies, and he loves doing what he does, and he has a passion for it. So I think overall that they did a really good job with this. But yeah, so what is something that you probably didn't like or could have done without in the movie?
I think one scene that made me like sigh real loud and roll my eyes was when he got into the plane to do the mission, the
Mm-hmm.
example of the mission on his own, and to show that he could do it in 2 minutes and 15 seconds, even though he was trying to get them to do it in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The fact that they showed you have the best of the best that you call back to Top Gun, and you mean to tell me out of the best of the best, none of them could do it, but you could in less time than you were giving them. So that made me roll my eyes a lot, because that was just I don't know, like kind of like a pat on the back, like I'm the best, and strutting around kind of thing. And I found that to be unnecessary. I guess that was the scene that ultimately led to where they told him like, hey, you're gonna have to go out and lead this mission because you're the only one that's been able to do it. But yeah, that was like a roll my eyes kind of moment of the movie.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the original where he was the best of the best, uh, and I guess that's one of the things where, like I said, this they did a good job of keeping it as a standalone, but some of the things had to see the original to kind of understand. And so, like when they have to, like they were flying F-18s, and so when they went to steal the F-14, um, at that point, and I think they briefly mentioned it, that he was one of the few people that's ever done this particularly hard stunt, even in an F-14. So it kind of goes back to him, and what he did in the original of him just being that good of a fighter pilot. But I agree. I think that, and that's why I say that some of this was, you knew it was not the passing of the baton, or a next generation thing like it had been billed at one point, because at that point I was fully prepared to have him maybe, I would have been okay if one of the other pilots, if one of the kids, so to speak, the younger generation, the next gen, had actually flown the mission, and he would have had to been the one to go in and save them. That's where I thought it was headed. But for him to actually take over and fly the mission, I thought we got cheated a little bit with that. But as far as him having to go in and save the day and maybe rescue, I would have been okay with that, if that makes sense. So I can kind of agree with you a little bit there. The way they pulled it off, or the way they carried it off, it was kind of anticlimactic, I guess. Um, And so that's one of the things I did not like. I don't think that the next gen got enough. I understand he's the star. I understand that it was about him and his character mainly, but I think they could have given the next gen a little bit more to do. What about you?
Well, it's not like they were trying to pass the movie over to the next gen. So I don't think that that was ever coming where you're passing the baton to the next generation of pilots because um I don't think that was the mission of the movie. Like it's not like they're going to make another Top Gun and he's going to be a side character or he's not going to be in the movie like he was passing it on to Rooster played by Miles Teller or Hangman. Oh my god, what was the woman's
Phoenix?
Phoenix. Like it's not like you watch the movie and you're like, "Oh shoot, like so are they going to make another Top Gun and have like the best of the best this generation taking like no, they're not making another Top Gun with them in the lead. So that like that never was a thought in my mind that um they were passing it on to uh the next generation.
It's not so much passing it on to the next generation. It was just to me giving them more to do. Like it was a great cast, a great cast. But here's the thing: you had, and what I mean by that is I can understand Phoenix and Bob being taking the second, being one, two of his wingmen. I can understand that duo. But then out of nowhere, you have Fanboy and Payback as your seconds, and we rarely even saw Fanboy and Payback. So that's what I mean by giving them more to do. We know Hangman was good, but Hangman had an attitude. Okay, I understand why you chose Rooster because you wanted to build his confidence and show that you trusted him. Hangman, like they said, he still had more of that attitude, but that. So I'm saying if you're picking, give me a reason to believe because even if Hangman has an attitude, Fanboy and Rooster could have gotten up in a plane and shot down the people who were on your six as you were flying back to the carrier. So give me a reason to believe, make me understand why you're picking those two. So that's what I mean by giving them more to do. At this point, I realize it's the Tom Cruise show. Like I said, I got that. It was all about him, and that was okay. That I was good with it. But it's just I think that it could have we could have had a little bit more for the supporting cast to do. So that was one of my hangups. Not necessarily passing the baton because, like you said, if they do make another Top Gun, then maybe it would be. I don't know. Tom Cruise is pushing 70. He might try to get his old ass, his geriatric ass, up in a plane and fly
Please,
again.
he gonna be making
Um,
Mission Impossible movies until he's real old, like Liam Neeson.
he's still gonna be in there. They gonna look. He's gonna. Yeah, I see him still making action movies and making movies until they literally put him in the ground.
Yeah,
Uh, but so if they, but that's what I'm saying. I get that. Okay, at one point, especially once you see the movie, you go in, hey, like we both said, Tom Cruise he's not gonna play anyone's sidekick. All right. Um, Everyone else is going to be Tom Cruise's sidekick. I think that they could have given the sidekicks in this particular movie a little bit more to do. Like I said, I would have thought the mission would have been more interesting if he would have had to actually come in and save the day. Like if he would have tried to give them the mission, Rooster, whoever, and he froze up like he did, and he actually had to come in. So maybe it's just me, my writer's brain being nitpicky, trying to find ways to make it better, but that was the thing to me. I did like, the scene where Rooster comes in and helps him and comes back for him, and they actually end up having to steal the F-14, which he was like this old bag of ash, like the bag of bones, which is basically an F-14 at this point is a relic. But also one scene, I also thought it would have been cool if that plane, that cool new age plane that he was flying at the beginning, I thought that might have served a more of a purpose rather than just him getting in trouble. Like if that was the only plane that they found would have been able to do that, and he was the only one that had been able to fly it since he was testing it. Like, I thought that was just a waste of a scene, and a waste of something that could have been possibly cool, because I think that would have given his character also a little bit more do to do than, like you said, going up and having this contrived. You have the best of the best, but after all this time, no one can get it, can fly the mission but him, and then he comes in and he blows everyone out of the water. So I think maybe if it came down to him, to them figuring out that, hey, the F-18 isn't the plane for this, and they would have had to use that test plane, from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
um, Especially considering you were getting up to 10 G's, and an F-18, dude, you're like you're practically blowing out your body, your organs, risking organ failure and death trying to get an F-18 up that high. So it's just little things like that I was like, okay. So I think that cool plane could have served more of a purpose than to get him in trouble and ultimately sent back to Top Gun. I think they could have found another way, like you said, to make the fact that you have the best of the best, and you understand that it's Tom Cruise. So if he's going to be the hero, I get that. I think they could have found another way for him to be a hero to just kind of make it a little bit better. What about you? You got anything else?
No, I think you summed it up well.
So now, suppose there is a Top Gun 3. Would you watch it?
Depends. I think the beauty of Top Gun was the fact that the last Top Gun was made in the 80s. And like there was a little bit of nostalgia, but it was also, I think, a good story that they had. Of course, we pointed out like certain things that could have been different, but overall I think it was a good story that they had in the movie. So it would depend. Like if they're planning on coming out with another Top Gun in 2-3 years, I would watch it, but I would just watch it just because I watch blockbusters, not necessarily because like I'm really excited. I think that this was just a perfect way of taking the time and then coming back with a good story rather than just coming because it made money.
Yeah, I do think the story is good, and especially with everything going on in the world, you can always find um, there's always some bone, some meat to get off the bone about military stories and all of that. Like I said, given the geopolitical climate, um, so it's just how would you make that into a believable story, and again, how would you make it into a compelling or good story? So I got that. But yeah. And I'm with you. I would probably watch it because, like you say, I do have a thing. Although I do love a good indie movie, or a smaller movie. I also have a thing for blockbusters, especially summers are the blockbuster, and um, I think that was a good way to kick off the summer, quote unquote, blockbuster season. Although I don't know of, like, especially when it seems lackluster. Like, this is going to probably be a year of lackluster movies. And I guess, coming off of the COVID hiatus and trying to figure all of that out, I think we are hitting that lull, and seeing how production's going to go. And again, are we gonna have another Disney? Are we gonna have another Marvel movie this summer, or is it? Well, yeah, we have Thor: Love and Thunder coming out. So, but we'll see how it goes. And as you already said, this did nothing to change your opinion of Tom Cruise.
No.
Nothing at all.
No.
Ah, poor, can't catch a break.
Did it change your opinion of Tom Cruise?
Um, no, like I said, I like him as an actor. I try to leave the whole Scientology part out of it. I tend to be more of a Tom Cruise action fan. I like his action movies more than I like his dramatic roles. Um, so I can't say that I'm just going to go out and watch every Tom Cruise movie ever. I do advise that for people who may not have seen his earlier stuff, 80s, 90s, the ones that really put him out there, Cocktail, Days of Thunder, Top Gun, uh, Risky Business. If you haven't seen his earlier movies, I would highly advise you to go watch those. Jerry Maguire is a great one. It's a classic. So, but yeah, and try to, just take him for what he is. And if you can't separate the whole Scientology weirdness, try to put that in its whole little separate thing. As an actor, as a movie star, as someone who has worked really hard to try to save the box office in the theater, and I can appreciate that. So I have a respect for his love of his profession, and I still think it was an OG move just when he went off on those people in London when they got COVID and he was like, what the fuck? That was, but so yeah. But anyway, how would you rate, getting to the good part, how many popcorns are you giving this?
I'm gonna give Top Gun Maverick 4 popcorns. I really enjoyed the movie from beginning to end. I thought it was a great movie. I also like the fact that I didn't feel I missed anything because I never saw the first one. Yeah, I may not have gotten like the whole
Sorry
dynamic
about
of
that.
him and Iceman, but overall, I didn't feel like I was missing out or I was lost because I did not watch the first Top Gun. But overall, just it on its own, Top Gun on its own, Maverick was just really, really great. The action was there. The character dynamics was there. I didn't consider the script to be a bad script. I didn't consider the lines to be like cheesy lines, except for that one scene that I talked about that I like really rolled my eyes about. Overall, it kept my interest from beginning to end. So yeah, so for popcorns for Top Gun Maverick, in spite of Tom Cruise. What about you, Eddie?
I'm going to give it 4 as well. I One thing we didn't really talk about was the love story. I didn't even
Nah,
find,
nah, nah. We good. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. I
yeah,
apologize. Go
no,
ahead.
I didn't find that to be too contrived. It was interesting. You get it. There are parts I could have done without over it, but um, it and in all honesty, you actually didn't need it. But it wasn't bad. I like Jennifer Connelly, so um, but I agree. It was a good throwback. It and it is a test of a good story, especially a good sequel when you can make something pretty much a standalone. Um, and I appreciate that they did that for people like you again. And I'm going to keep bringing it up who have not seen the original, who refuse to see the original. You can watch this and not feel like you've missed out. Um, you know, so I appreciate that. I appreciate the nostalgia for those of us who have seen the original and do like love the original movie. So it was the best of both worlds. I think that they did a really, really good job of creating that nostalgia, creating giving you that sense of throwback for the OGs, and then giving it its own spirit and life for the new school. So for the next generation. So I can really appreciate that. And I think it did a good job and it served its purpose. And again, I understand and I appreciate at this point um, in the height of 2020 COVID 2021, you really didn't get it why he was so insistent on not releasing this movie um, to the streaming world, and why insisting that it has its full theatrical run and all of that. So I do appreciate it, and yeah, kudos to that. So again, I also give it 4 stars. We've kind of been agreeing on ratings lately. Gosh, that means that means you're developing good taste. You're developing better taste.
Oh,
shots,
burn.
shots fired. No, but in all honesty, I hope you feel better. You know,
Thank you.
and I guess that does it for this week's episode of the Popcorn Wind Down. Please be sure to listen, like, follow, comment on, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and as of this week, we are also now on iHeartRadio, expanding that listening base and that audience base. So check us out. Ever growing, ever growing. You can also keep up to date on the latest in entertainment and pop culture news, as well as other amazing kernels of pop culture goodness at the Popcorn Wind Down, making its full comeback with the Daily Wind Down and all the other amazing features we have there this week. That's it. That's the plug. Pop, 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 pop. Not harassing about the sound effect this week because I realize you're under the weather, but don't think that I'm not still going to be working to get my sound effect. Thank you as always, and be sure to join us next week when we discuss the final season of Love, Victor. Are we gonna shed tears? I love Love, Victor. So
I do. I'm a huge fan of it.
I'm looking forward to how they're ending this final season of the show. But until next time, I'm Eddie.
And I'm Tammy. Bye.
Peace.